we are back for another episode of AI Tool Report Live. I am in a very good mood today because I get to speak to someone that I've worked with for a good amount of time now. It must be around 9 months. Is that right, Davis?
Yeah, 9 months, maybe 10 if you include planning.
There we are. All right, so we got 10 months in the bank. I want to introduce today's guest. I have actually never asked how to pronounce your surname, so I'll have a go at it. Davis McCondichie? No, I've definitely murdered that, haven't I?
See, Liam, you went a little too Scottish with it. That's what happened here. It is Scottish, so I thought you could handle it, but it's actually McCondichie.
Oh, wow. Okay,
I know,
interesting.
right?
Does anyone ever get that first time?
Um, Occasionally someone will get it. I'll be honest. Normally, people really de-emphasize the Mac and the MC. They'll say like McCondichie when it's, if I'm being really specific, it's McCondichie.
Okay.
But it's the she that trips people up, as you saw. I get McConaughey all the time.
What people are just like that kind of looks somewhat like McConaughey. We'll just run with that for just now.
Yeah, they just say, close enough.
I want to get into everything that you're doing now, your role now, what you're building and stuff, but before we do that, there's two things I want to do. One, I want to get us warmed up with some quick fire questions, and I just want some kind of like one sentence answers, and there's not really a lot of context I'm going to give you for them either, okay?
Okay.
And then two, I want to get into your background as well. I've done a bit of digging into your journey, into your lawn care businesses and and your background. So I'll do that before we get into what you're doing now, if that sounds good to you.
That sounds great. Let's do it.
All right. So quick fire questions to get you warmed up. Instagram or TikTok?
Instagram.
Being in your 20s or being in your 30s?
20s right now. I haven't experienced my 30s.
Ooh, excited for your 30s?
Yes.
Okay. High fives or fist bumps?
Fist bumps.
Science or technology?
Technology. That's
Okay. AI or stonks?
AI.
All right, there you are. All right, I think we've got a pretty good baseline. Honestly, Davis, I thought you were 31. You're still in your 20s.
Yeah, I'm 27. Believe it or not. And you know what's crazy, Liam, and I know we'll get into this more. My co-founder here at Swipe Labs, Jeremy, who you're also aware of, Jeremy's younger than me.
Oh, really? How old is Jeremy?
Jeremy, I believe, is 26. So I'm 27. He's 26. He's just a year younger.
Wow, you guys both give off the energy that you're in your kind of like early 30s or something, just like very professional, very detail orientated and stuff. You don't really see that from many people your age.
Yeah, my sisters used to say I had the soul of a 60-year-old when I was like 12. So, I guess I'm like Benjamin Button. Maybe I'm aging in reverse. Who knows?
All right, I'm glad I'm not the only one that said that now. It makes me feel a bit less bad about it.
Yeah, no, definitely.
All right. Thank you for the quickfire questions. I want to jump into your background first of all, and I think a good kind of question to gauge, kind of where someone is today and like why they are and where they are today is taking it right back to like your time as a child, like how your childhood has informed who you are today. So my question for you is, when you were kind of a child in your teenage years, what did you want to be when you grew up? What was your first kind of admiration that you were like, I want to go and do that?
Oh man, it's actually an embarrassing answer, to be quite honest. Well, when I was really young, I think I was like a lot of kids. I wanted to be a cowboy astronaut president. Like the big mixed bag. But
the trifecta.
Yeah. But I think when I was about 8 years old, I was at the pool with my family, and I don't know what spawned the conversation, but they still bring this up to me. I told everyone that I was going to be the president of the United States, and I was going to ban alcohol. They just brought that up. I do not feel the same way now. I would say if I had a platform, that would not be a part of my platform. But when I was a kid, I definitely wanted to be the president. That was kind of the thing, and I think a lot of that was spawned from knowing that that's someone who leads, and that was something that really always stuck with me. And I always was told as a kid by both my parents, you're a winner and a leader, and they did that just to encourage us and make us feel confident in ourselves. And I always thought a leader was someone who stood up for people, helped people feel accepted in groups and everything. So growing up as a kid, I tried not to be the bully. I was a teacher's pet for sure.
Interesting. And like that leadership, is that what kind of led you into that initial venture from what I can see from your LinkedIn history of McCondichie Lawn Care?
Yeah, so that's actually really interesting. So in high school, I moved houses. My dad came back home one day and was like, I quit my job. And I think we all kind of had the same anxious buzz that he did when he told us that. 'Cause all we've ever known of our dad is that he works in heavy equipment. He sells tractors. That was his life for as long as I could remember. And now he wasn't going to do that. And it was scary. But part of what he ended up doing after that was flipping properties. This was big right after the recession here in the United States. He would invest in properties and then flip them, and I essentially interned there. And so one thing I did, one of my jobs was to clean up the yards. My dad got free work out of it, and I got pretty good at lawn care. And what I would do is you clean that lawn, you go over to the neighbor, go, hey, doesn't that new house look nice? You want your lawn done too? And that kind of was the spawn of the lawn care business, and trying to own something, right, and do something. And it was just me, a couple of lawn tools in the back of my 4Runner in high school, just driving around, taking care of lawns in the heat of the summer in Georgia. So you earn your stripes in a sense doing that.
Yeah, interesting. So you said you were in high school. What kind of like age range that you started to finish that?
So that was after my sophomore year, and I had to be able to drive, obviously. So I was a late bloomer to driving, to be quite honest with you. It took me about 6 months after my birthday to get my license. I just don't like driving. That's why I live in New York now. But 17 to 18, it kind of stopped once I had a knee surgery, so I couldn't really mow lawns anymore. But at that point, I just helped my dad in office, pulling up tax files, lining up properties, going to investigate them, take photos, all that stuff, because we had other property management we had to do at that point. So it kind of stopped after I lost both my knees, essentially.
God, yeah. It's a young age to lose both your knees at as well.
Yeah, it was from football. I tore a complex tear in both meniscus. Or menisci at that point, I don't know. But I tore them both playing football the same year, back-to-back surgery. So there was about 6 months there where I was on crutches or kind of in disrepair. And so I don't remember a lot of my junior year at that point.
God, yeah, that's got to be rough. And you mentioned in there that there was this kind of transition from your dad being this kind of company man with a steady job to the point where he becomes an entrepreneur, he's flipping houses and stuff like that. Do you think that you would have had the same kind of aspiration to be an entrepreneur, to like have that motivation there if your dad hadn't done it?
I definitely don't think so. And that was, so my dad took that ability and that learnings from flipping houses and went after his real dream, which was to be a published author. And my dad is now a published author. He has a few books out there. Steve McCondichie, Lying for a Living, I think was his first book. And we helped him with a small publishing company because he kept going to agents. They couldn't get the book published. He said, F it, I'll do it myself. And that kind of starting attitude, I think, really runs deep in my family in general. My grandfather as well on that side was an entrepreneur. He started a heavy equipment company that my dad started up before leaving it, called Tracks. And it just feels like there's something in our family we just like starting and building things. And so my dad built that publishing company up. He has since gone back to selling heavy equipment as well. But he'll always have that chapter in his life. And now I'm in my chapter of building and following my dreams. So it is interesting to kind of see that through line. And we also have the same through line of my dad, my grandfather, and I all have 3 older sisters. So I don't know if that's a part of it that plays a part in wanting to go do your own thing, but maybe it does. Who knows?
I'm curious with this doing your own thing. There's obviously kind of a bunch of different routes you can take that. You can take it to starting a business. For you can take it to doing the lawn care. You can also, from what I can see, have done a lot of photography for many years and have kind of slowly improved. I had a look at your Instagram feed, and the pictures are getting better and better and better. Is there any crossover between like that kind of eye for aesthetics in terms of what you do with the photography, what you have done, that passion for that, to what you do now in terms of like running this creative ad agency, like this real eye for detail?
Yeah, I would define my eye for aesthetic to be modest at best. To be quite frank with you, I'm glad you're saying the photography is improving. I think part of that's just using film instead of digital is helping be more critical with what I'm actually snapping. But my interest in photography did start when I was pretty young, but also just making content in general. I remember being on YouTube watching videos till 2 a.m. just on my iPod Touch. I don't know if some of our viewers probably don't remember that was a thing, but back before your iPhone could do everything, you had an iPod Touch, and the YouTube logo was a TV. Remember? But I would constantly be on YouTube, and I learned how to start a channel. And I was like 12, and I remember I would do what I'm doing now. I try to figure out what the platform rewards and try to go after that. A lot of people look at Mr. Beast. There's a lot of Mr. Beasts out there who just gave up, right, and didn't continue to push and learn. Myself among them. But I remember putting the word cats in my headlines because cat videos were everywhere, right? So I find a way to mention a cat in the headline because it would boost the views, and all kind of stuff like that. So it's not even just photography, but just a passion for creating and finding a way to be seen in that creativity has always been something I've been interested in.
It's like that experimentation, the curiosity to play around with the algorithms, to play around with what kind of triggers the most reaction. And I really like that's something I want to touch on a little bit, like how you guys handle the changing tides of the algorithms. They're all the more complex than they used to be, and it seems like a bit of a black box that's a bit of a guessing game. But if there's anyone that's got more insight into it than anyone, it's probably yourself. I'm curious in this kind of transition period between high school to kind of where you are now with Swipe Labs, what were the kind of projects that you were focusing on, like following your curiosity, your experimentation? I can see on Twitter you're kind of self-described as a former Stonks guy. What happened there? Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's the journey from high school into Stonks is pretty simple. I went to college, went to Mizzou, wearing a Mizzou t-shirt right now. I'm Mizzou mate. I went there for journalism. At the time, sport broadcast, but specifically into the big documentary film. Just fell in love with video editing and writing and story structure. And that passion evolved over time. And I was writing scripts for a company called Valnet. They publish on a YouTube channel called Scriptwriting. So I really I got my 10,000 hours in working for that company in college, getting paid 150, 200 bucks a script, right? To sound human. You had to really sound personal, but you're in a content mill. You had to get a video out in 24 hours, right? Your scripts had to come quick. So the quality had to be there very fast. I got a lot of reps learning how YouTube reacts with this. And came out of college and lo and behold, took a terrible internship. I won't name their name, but unpaid. I lost money on it as I had to pay for parking in Atlanta. So $20 a day just to not learn anything. Then I had a great internship, and that internship fell into COVID. I had no job prospects, so here I am looking at Wall Street Bets. I've been on Reddit again since I was in high school. Loved Reddit and Robinhood and all this stuff. My grandfather on my mother's side was a day trader, so I had already been kind of interested in this stuff and had some knowledge of it. And I see this job on AngelList asking for a video editor for a newsletter on Stonks. That's what it was. And I applied, and under the position, this is a real story. What are you applying for? I said attendees acquisition specialist.
Okay.
Just trying to show them that I understood the lingo and the language, and I wrote it in a very Wall Street Bets way to show them I'm your guy. I get a message back from a guy named John Hancock saying, "You seem like our guy. Can you edit a video in 6 hours?" Yep, I can. I've been editing quick pretty much all my life. And John Hancock was his real name, by the way. I don't know if I should be using real names, but John was a big part of getting me started on Stonks and believing in me. And Stonks goes from there, and I can keep talking about Stonks, but that's how I became a former Stonks guy. That's how I got my opportunity, was through my video editing skills, and that really, really grew from there.
How important was that process of getting your reps in with the script writing? Because we've talked about this before, like the talent market for finding someone that is actually able to write without the assistance of AI and has put in the time before AI became a thing to actually learn how to write like a human and write in different formats for different tones for different newsletters and stuff is really, really important. So I mean, what was your kind of experience there? What did that learning curve look like?
Yeah, first it takes getting fired. That's what it takes. I was originally writing listicles for them, and listicles, to be honest, it's just, at the time it used to be 5 things you didn't know about, Superman. And then they found out the more you packed in a list, the longer people stayed on the page, the more ads they saw. So suddenly it became 50 weaknesses Superman has, and it's really hard to write 50 weaknesses. And my writing style is not simple and clean cut. I don't write in very basic English. I write complex sentences. And so I kept getting fired because my grammar was a little off. I forgot to use a comma here and there, and the sentences were heavy to read. And they said, you know what? Why don't you try writing YouTube scripts? And that was a lot more rewarding to me because I could write to a voice. And that's what I say is so hard about script writing is people hear their internal monologue and they know how they sound, but to write for someone else and how they might sound and not make it sound cheesy is a hard skill. And then to keep it within a word count and trim it and have an also idea of what it's going to look like as a video, you're essentially a director and a writer when you're doing these scripts, because they had no directors. So you had to tell the people, when I mentioned the Little Mermaid here, this is a joke. I want you to put this image here, right? And that's where this 2-column script kind of came into learning how to do that. And hearing the voiceover artist say, oh, we love when you get a script from you because you know how we talk, was the encouragement I needed to keep going on that. And it took a while to get there. I got a lot of scripts back. This doesn't make sense. This doesn't flow. Learning to get from point A to point B in an efficient, you have to hit 10 minutes. Then you had to hit 5 minutes. Then you had to hit 15 minutes, right? They were learning about the YouTube algorithm the entire time too. So you're really watching and just having to be flexible the whole way because platforms also always changing. So that was a big takeaway for me, was learning to write in different voices and then learning to write for the platform and what they're looking for.
2 questions that kind of actually combine together. Like, one, what are the specific techniques that you would use to actually really learn someone's intricacies and their voice? And 2, tell me more about this 2-column script you mentioned.
Yeah. I'll start with the 2-column script because that's the easy answer. It's used commonly in news. I found out about it from my time at Mizzou. That's how we write. So 2-column script, left or right, it doesn't matter. The idea is 1 column is the visuals, what people are going to see. If there's a graphic, there's text on screen, if the presenter should be doing something or in a specific scene at a certain time. And then the other column is the word spoken. And you write that in all caps in bold 16 font because it needs to be easy to read. It's going to get dragged into a teleprompter, most likely, right? And so you put, all right, this should go here, there, and this is what you should be saying when it's on there. It's just easier than a traditional movie script, right, where you say, John walks up the stairs and then he says something, right? Well, there's not a lot of movement to these scripts. A lot of times they're motion, graphics with voiceover. So you have to be reading it and say, why he's reading it, this should be on the screen. And that's where 2-column scripts come. Think about, a news presenter, when they say there was a robbery last night, the graphic should be showing the robbery and not a teddy bear, right? And so you have to put, this graphic should be there. This is the graphic we're going to use. And you have to be an accurate photo. You don't want someone putting up the wrong photo for the wrong thing, because then suddenly you're saying robbery and it's the president and people think the president's robbed, right? So that's where 2-column scripts come in. It's just to be as accurate and fact checked as possible. In terms of writing for voice, my first scripts were really bad because they were written in my voice and I talk differently than someone else might. And what I ended up doing was I started just watching the videos. It's that simple of hearing, oh, he has a different cadence. He has a different pattern to his voice. Oh, he talks a lot faster. Oh, he talks a lot slower. And really, Liam, at the end of the day, it's poetry. And I don't know if how much poetry you've done in your life, but the rules in poetry are different to what's logical. When you see a short sentence, you read it slower. When you see a long sentence, you read it faster, right? And you would think you would read the long one slower and the short one quicker, but it's the exact opposite when you're doing kind of that beat work. And so that's how you write the script too, is they're going to logically do that and not even realize they're doing it. So you do that, and then you also give them words in brackets to tell them when to pause, say this with exclamation, give this a beat, or say this in sarcastic tones, right? So you can kind of meld their voice a little bit to what you want, but also you have to recognize their pacing, right? And I knew that the guy that we had loved starting out with kind of this big inflection and down. And so I would always try to give something that could really come and go, right? And then that became what was popular. I'm sure you know from short form video, one of the other tricks that we kind of developed was, and this is now all over YouTube, but at the time I would say Screener was one of the first ones to it. They said, what's the most important thing in your list, in your video? That's going in the intro. Tell people what they're about to see. Tell people what's the most important idea that they're going to know. And if they buy it, they're in for the rest of the video, right? And then whatever that is has to be point number 10, right? So point number 10 is that Clark Kent is really Superman. You better start with, we're going to reveal the identity of Superman in this video. Hang around, right?
Got you. So it's like audio clickbait, essentially.
Yeah. Oh, clickbait's been around since the beginning of advertising, as I always say. So yes, definitely audio clickbait.
Interesting. From all this experience of kind of reviewing these and then just sitting watching half an hour of tape of someone speaking and understanding complexities of how they speak and why they speak and then writing these scripts, what have you learned about human psychology? What do we react to? Like, what are maybe some things that we wouldn't be able to see on the surface that you've learned from so much analysis?
We are boring by nature in some ways. And by that, I mean, you and I talking right now is more engaging because it's two different voices, it's two different inflections, two different things are happening. When it's one person on screen and they are just talking and going through a list and there's a monotony and you get too much into a pace, we're creatures of habit, we like creating similar pacing. People scroll. If we want to look at short form, if we want to look at YouTube, they click on the next video. They become disengaged and they go to start looking. This is not a movie. You don't have someone in the seat for 2 hours. They didn't buy a ticket, right? They can easily click away. And so how do you keep them engaged? And I would say voice needs help. That's how I would put that, right? What I learned is it's not just matching voices. It's knowing how the sound bed is going to work, knowing if there's an engaging visual, and having fun with it. A monotonous voice is not an interesting voice. So the voice actors need jokes. They need to feel like they're having fun. They need to feel like they're talking to you and only you, right? Or else you're not going to engage with it. And another way to look at this is Screener had a competitor that was way bigger, and I'm forgetting their name now. Everyone used to watch their top 10 videos. They were like the channel on YouTube for the longest time.
I think I know who you're speaking of.
Someone's going to know their name and yell at me in the comments, but they used to be the big competition. That's also who I'd watch. And one thing they did really well.
Watch Mojo?
Watch Mojo, yes. Watch Mojo.
There you are, yeah.
One thing Watch Mojo did really well is that voice became iconic. And part of why she was so iconic as a voice is she cracked jokes in it. She'd bring her own little commentary. It felt like she was commenting on the script she watched too, right? There was Easter eggs that would carry through. And so I tried to do it with the voice actor I had is I always wanted the same voice actor too, because I wanted him to develop a rapport with the audience. Because if they developed that, they're going to feel like this is my buddy, this is my channel, right? And that's a big part of voice is just giving it personality, essentially, finding ways to make it less monotonous.
I'm not sure if you'll have the answer to this question, but is there any particular type of accent or distinguish like a change between male and female that people react to better wondering if you're on the East Coast, will you react better to someone from the East Coast, West Coast to West Coast? Is there something that's universally the most
Yes,
accepted?
this is where I'm laughing. It's bad news for us. It's bad news for us. I'll be honest. People love British accents.
Okay.
People love British accents. They don't like Scottish. They don't like Southern. They like British. And so, and by that I mean like London proper.
Yeah, I was gonna say I'm technically British, but I don't sound what people would qualify as British.
Specific, high class English accents is what they like. Colin Firth is their kind of English accent, right? That's a big part of it. And I will say, what is also more interesting about when we talk about any use of a female voice actor and tones there is what I noticed a lot of channels do, and I don't know what the research is behind this, but I've noticed this pattern. It's one of two different types. They either have a lower tone, which sounds a bit more masculine, or it goes the exact opposite, and it feels really high energy and really high pitch and just bubbly, right? It's one of the two. Like, think Watch Mojo voice, low, very serious, sounds professional. Or hey guys, I'm really high pitched and I sound like I'm in an anime, right? Like, it's one of those two every time. And I feel like there's just not enough research there to define those as the best options, but there seems to be positive responses there. And I think people in general respond better to female voice actors for videos in general. You can see that through shorts as well. I think a lot of the AI voices, people tend to lean towards the female voice actor rather than male.
Interesting. Do you reckon there's a reason to that?
I think it's just a bit more novel. I think a lot of male voice actors sound very similar and they're hard to tell apart at times. That's not, that's a very generality or a big general statement to make, but it's all those voice actors that I know can do the same voice, right? They can also get up there and do some different things and do fun accents, but the AI voices, I couldn't tell you. The one that ends up getting used the most on TikTok is that Joker voice that was really popular. I think it was literally called Joker, where it was really high pitch, right? It sounded like you were in helium, and that's because it was novel. It was different. Whereas, and I feel like a lot of the female tones and voices feel more novel. They're more likely to stop the scroll, right? Because it's like, oh, this is a different voice than the dude talking to his AirPods walking, and he sounds like the other dude walking and talking on his AirPods. And so that's definitely something I've noticed. That just, we can talk about all different reasons it might stop the scroll, but this is also part of our job, is figuring out why are people reacting to different things and testing that and gathering that data, and also looking at what other people are doing, because there's lots of market research around this.
I want to take things back for a second, just kind of outside of this subject and more onto the script writing specifically. Do you think with the advent and the introduction of AI, are we now looking at a skills gap in this area? Because new prospects that are going to be doing these internships like you did or writing stuff just don't have the time or patience, or I'll just use ChatGPT and that'll write my script. And then a second kind of part to that question, in your experience, have you seen any AI model that could replicate a voice as closely as you want to in terms of the finished quality that you would expect?
The second part of that question is very interesting. I'll take on the first part of it and say that when I look at writers today, I still have hope. And I think that where the reaction is coming is a lot of people who are into writing and want to do it and not use AI are going far and away from it as possible. And by that, I mean they're going more towards artistic pursuits. They believe AI can't do poetry. It can't write a full novel. It can't do this or that. So they go towards those pursuits. In response, the content mills, like what I worked at, and it's rude to call them content mills, but that's what they are, right? They're meant to just churn out scripts and lists and articles as quickly as possible for SEO purposes to sell ads, right? That used to be a big role and a big job that you could easily get as a freelancer. Well, those jobs have dried up because it's not the writer who goes, I can use AI. It's the business person who goes, all I have to do is pay $20 a month in a subscription, and ChatGPT will write all these for me. Bingo. right? Or I can pay this specific model trained on this, and it's going to sound good enough, right? And I don't have to keep bringing in writers as they leave me to go do other things, right? I can just keep my subscription and keep my control. And it's a very compelling offer, and I would say that's where AI belongs. I think AI can do a great job of making SEO optimized script. I couldn't do that, right? That's why I wasn't doing those jobs. I don't think AI can do voice as well. And I would say the best model of getting close to that in terms of making a short video script is still the latest GPT model by OpenAI. But even then, it takes a lot of prompt engineering and a lot of examples. You got to really give it multi-chain reasoning before it can get to that level. It's just not gonna get there right off the bat, and that's frustrating because I can tell. And it's kind of an insult to writers when you tell them, "Did you use ChatGPT?" Like, I'll ask my writers, and they go, well, "I haven't used it in months." And it's like, then this can be better because ChatGPT could do this.
Yeah,
and that is raising the bar in a sense. And the people who want to respond to it will, but a lot of people are just leaving this space because they think AI can do it. So why bother replying?
It kind of mentioned in there as like its ability to replicate what we actually want as humans. And me and you have had a discussion about this before, and that you've actually saw, in some regards, a reverse in terms of what people want, right? We get so used to really high quality produced content with the lighting and everything filmed in S-Log and then post-produced after. And you guys had noticed that on TikTok, like what was performing well was some person walking along the street speaking into like wired Apple earphones and stuff like that. So I guess like I'm just kind of wondering, as ChatGPT and stuff gets better at replicating what was traditionally like the most engaged with, which was this high quality, really produced stuff, is actually like, are we going to revert back to something that is more innately human, where it is just someone speaking to the camera without a script?
At some point, we always regress to the mean, right? That is just what we do. And I think when we talk about short form, part of that's that high production quality. Part of that is just the we call it ADHD editing. You might call it over editing, hyper editing. There's a lot of different terms for it, but it's that idea that something's got to be happening. Something's got to be going, and just give them everything, and they scroll past and then the next one, right? And what that ended up constricting into over time was things would go so fast and so much would come at people all at once. And when every video feels like that, it becomes noise. So then it's, how do you cut the noise? That's constantly what you're doing on these platforms. To stop the scroll, you need to stop the scroll. And to stop that, you have to feel different, right? And what became different, and where I think people have overly moved to now, and now this is all the noise pretty quickly, is this idea of a live-in creator, someone who's there, they're on their phone, they're just talking to you. And it's finding that balance, right? Of just creativity always wins out, is what the real point of that is. And right now, the creativity, the novelty of it was, it's still the same principles of what made that hyper edit work. It's just, you remove all of that production scale because it was approachable. Anyone could now access that. Anyone could make an AI video edit from that or use CapCut. These skills are now very approachable. So suddenly, all right, what's the next step? What can I do that no one else is doing, right? But it's not just short form video. That's true across the span of content and as it's existed. That's why you get Armageddon and Deep Impact, similar summer blockbusters, right back to back, because we're copycats by nature. If we think something works, we're going to try it again, right? And so that's what ends up creating that noise. It's just everyone hunting for the same success.
You mentioned in there what I can do that no one else is doing. What have you seen in your experience in the past few months, the past year, in terms of on YouTube, on TikTok, Instagram, like examples of maybe individual creators that are doing things different, that really kind of struck a chord or like garnered your attention?
Yeah, it's Nat Chung Sala is one that jumps out to me in terms of a creator who really stuck out for quite a while and turned that into his brand. I think going back to just a truth of someone who will always stand down, has been doing it for about 4 years now, but been doing it for decades, that I've really glopped onto is I think Van Neistat's Spirited Man channel and the way he uses shorts and the way he approaches video creation is novel on those pages. And, someone like Life of RZA on YouTube as well is someone who's part of that YouTube new wave of freaking back pace to edit. This is when we talk about short form and that overproduction quality and that pacing to it. It's so fast that suddenly when you get pauses, you appreciate it, right? And that is nice to see. But someone who I think is doing short form well in that sense is by Maximize, of taking that same pace, but utilizing it in a way of essentially doing montage editing. That's all it is. It's just a cinematic montage done in a clever way with some effects that you can't do on CapCut. So it feels unapproachable, right? But people can learn to do that style. And good creators are already replicating it. We replicate that in some of our work. But at the end of the day, the principles of it is the same as any short form video. It's just done in a way that stops the scroll because people don't see it because it's a different talent level, right? AI can't do what Maximize does. And so that's where you constantly have to ask yourself, what can I do that AI can't? Or what can AI help me do that makes me 10x better than the other person?
I'll link all of these kind of creators below as well, so we can have a look through. If you want to stop the podcast just now and have a look through their content, I think now we're kind of dipping our toes into that concept of going viral and what the kind of secret sauce behind that is. So, you have more insight into this than pretty much anyone I know. Firstly, before we kind of jump into the components of that, how would you describe going viral to someone? Is it just a matter of how many engagements to get? Is it something more than that?
It's when you're remembered. It's when people are actually talking about you. When word of mouth is high for whatever the niche would be, you have gone viral. And the first time I went viral, it felt amazing. And it still does every time. And to describe how that happened, and that wasn't even viral in the sense of, it was not a post on social. It wasn't anything we did in terms of intentionally doing that, but it was very intentional. It was at Stonks, and we were doing our first demo day. At Stonks, my role there was growth, and we held these virtual demo days at the time when a lot of angel investors and VC funds could not invest in startups because YC had gone virtual as well. So a lot of people just couldn't take pitch meetings. So we started filling that need. But the issue was a lot of startups didn't know about us. A lot of angel investors we had no deals, so a lot of angel investors didn't come. So it's how do you get that attention on you to create that marketplace, right? It's a two-sided marketplace. You need to get both. How do you get both their attentions at the same time? Well, you find something they're both interested in. And we were sitting there planning out the demo day, and I forget who it was in the group. This was a collective decision, but someone was playing Silicon Valley, the HBO show, because we were all fans of it. We were all joking about it. We had emojis in our chat with it. And again, I forget who brought it up. They're like, man, it'd be cool if we could get someone from the show to come in, like spoof pitch one of their companies. And Ali Moyes, our CEO, the founder, really smart guy, taught me a lot about business in general, said, all right, we're on it. That's a good idea. Let's do it. So we got TJ Miller to come and pitch a fake company that the VCs who were sitting there as the panel had no idea was about to happen. So it was this big comedy sketch in the middle of it. Again, we didn't post about this. What did they end up doing? They pull out their phones. They all start taking pictures of TJ Miller. All the people watching start taking pictures. And now they're posting about, oh my God, I'm on this thing called Stonks. And TJ Miller just showed up and he just pitched this company. This is hilarious. Right? And it went viral. People became like, oh my God, is TJ Miller going to show up again? When's TJ Miller going to show up? Is TJ coming? And it became kind of this occurring joke. Comedy comes in threes. We did it 3 times and then stopped because at that point it's no longer going to be funny. And it was what we needed. A lot of startups heard about us. Now they wanted to be on because they knew that investors were going to come to see TJ Miller, and it kind of raised us to another level. And then we started. This is a podcast, so I hope I can cuss. But this is literally what we called internally. We started shitposting because that's what everyone was just sitting on Twitter all day or socials, and they were just memeing. And we knew how to meme as well as anybody. And our memes, our jokes, our shitposts would go viral. And that's how more people found out about us, because we were talking to that niche. By viral, I don't mean that we got 1 billion views. I mean, if we got 1 million views, it was 1 million views from the right audience, because we were making jokes about BC, about angels. So that virality is not as big as the biggest tweet of that day, but it's the biggest tweet of the day in that niche, which is viral to us, right? And that's where I say, like, viral is always different how you define it, but it means that people are talking about you, right? And that's what going viral is that word of mouth is super huge. And so that's how we look at it and define it.
I mean, in your experience of everything you've seen go viral, is the core component, like the two things that I'm taking about it is, like, one, you've got your finger on the pulse of some sort of cultural trend that everyone's engaged with, and two, what's something, I mean, it's becoming more important, more paramount, and more reactions is like memology, like having some version of like a joke about it, like not as serious. Like that's what I'm taking out of like core components to virality. Is there anything I'm missing there? Anything you want to expand upon in terms of the two I've mentioned?
Yeah, I think you're pretty close on it. It all comes down to novelty and conversation, right? Of, you have to show me something new. If it's not a new idea or a new way of saying it, it's not going to be big enough, right? To bring up another example here, there have been plenty of interviews of people on the street trying to find drunk people and asking them questions that they shouldn't ask. And then it only takes one of them to say something so out of left field as Hawk Tua, for people to go, oh my God, that's hilarious and relatable. I'm going to share this, right? And that's where the conversation comes in. And the way to get conversation is by being relatable, right? It's to be relevant. That's the novelty aspect. And then it's to build a relationship, right? Those are my kind of 3 R's: is relevant.
Can you repeat that again? Relevance?
Yeah, it's, shoot, I always forget these. We used to have these written down somewhere, but it's relevance is a big one. That's the novelty factor. It's relatability. It's something that you can see yourself in some way. And again, even with the Hawk Tuah girl, people did see themselves, right? Like let's just be real there. And then it's also about building a relationship with the audience. That was someone who, they had a bunch of reps. There was going to be at least a core community there, right? So you need a relationship with some kind of audience. It needs to be relevant to what we're talking about now. So we talk about something that people are going to relate to. Memes are always very relevant, right? And then it needs to, I can't forget my R's. They all sound the same. I'm going to stop talking. They've heard it enough that someone's going to write that down and get them again. They are written down as part of our Swipe Labs principles. If I pulled it up, I could read them all off. We have 10 principles. That's in there. The number one, though, is that word of mouth is king and watch time is queen. That's what, if we want to talk about
watch
the metrics.
time is queen.
Yes, watch time is queen, word of mouth is king.
Okay.
So that's another way of looking at virality. If we want to talk about from a metrics standpoint, is when we're looking at the metrics of what goes viral, people need word of mouth. We consider shares and saves. That means it was relevant, right? People are sharing it, they're saving it. They saw something that they wanted someone else to see, or they wanted to remember, right? So that is key. You got to have people talking about it, or it's not going to move. The other part of that is watch time, and that comes down to the platform side of, people need to watch the video through, or the platform is not going to reward it. Because at the end of the day, we are all at the mercy of our great, Lord and Savior, the algorithm, which, like you said, feels like a black box. But at the end of the day, you have to consider, to quote all the presidents, men, follow the money, right? And these platforms are incentivized to keep you on the platform. So they want you making content that is going to keep people on the platform longer. And that's where watch time comes in. If people are staying on there, they're going to be more amenable to seeing an ad. So the watch time needs to be decent length. Can't be too long, or you're just not going to keep people. But even short isn't necessarily going to get rewarded. You got to earn a lot of rewatches on a short video. So that's where a short video has to be really hooked in order for it to work. And that's why we typically aim for more of like a 30, 45 second and really earn that watch time duration. Because think about how many ads have you seen that are 5 seconds long? How many ads have you seen that are 30 seconds long, right? They want the ads to blend. So they want to reward good videos that are ad-sized that keep people watching, because then they're going to look at the ad and not think twice.
Interesting. I love just like the core saying, follow the money. Keep people on for as long as possible. It's a really good principle to keep in mind. While you were speaking there, you were talking about novelty. How long does novelty need to cycle through before something old becomes novel again? And I'll give you an example. So we look at, I don't know if you've seen the whole thing about Brat Summer, Charlie XCX, her album coming out, right? It's a kind of reminder of like early 2000s. Everyone's in like the Britney Spears era, right? And people are now feeling nostalgic about that, to the point where like something like that has had such a huge cultural attention grabbing impact, right? And people really, really resonate with it because it reminds them of life 15, 20 years ago. So in your experience, like between the different channels, whether it's on social media, on YouTube and stuff, what do you see as the cycle of old content becoming new again?
The way I always think of it, and there's a lot of different people say the cycles hit this many years, so on. Fashion is a big indicator there, right, of what other pop culture trends will start to recycle. I would argue that fashion moved into the early 2000s before short video moved back into the 2000s, before other analog concepts from this time. But the way I always look at it is, what was the cooler older sibling doing? If you're in your 20s, that's what's going to be popular right now, right? The tastemakers are the younger generation. They're not even Gen Z now, right? This is the high schoolers right now, or iGen, or whatever they're going to end up calling them. And a lot of them, this is a mystery to them, right? Of seeing Britney Spears. They did not grow up seeing Britney Spears, but some of their parents did, right? Maybe not their parents, but an older sibling, right? Like, my sisters made me listen to the Spice Girls and Britney Spears, and all of this kind of stuff is familiar to me, but I was 4 years old. And so now it's kind of that, nostalgia means pain of looking for, or looking towards home, looking homeward. Nostos Elgas, right? I took ancient Greek in college. It's that FOMO is what that actually is. And it's the fear of having nostalgia, though. And that's what causes these cycles. Is you look at the camcorder footage of people in high school, and they look so much older, and you want to be older, right? You want to feel like you're part of that culture. And that's the movies you grew up watching, right? Because that's what your older sibling made you watch. And so you end up cycling back into that's what the tastemakers were on the internet, right? They were the older people who knew how to post, and you just scrolled and consumed, right? Mm-hmm. And so that's what you have to keep in mind, is that the people who are 20 years older were pushing the content out that you consumed, and now that you're older, and now you're pushing out content, you're remembering what they did, thinking, I want to do it too. And that's why that cycles like every 20 odd years. It's the cooler older sibling effect, is what I call it.
Interesting. I mean, cooler older sibling just makes me think of like RuneScape and grunge albums, to be honest. So maybe that'll have another cycle at some point as well.
Oh, I play RuneScape right now. Yeah, it's on your mobile phone now, and that's my nieces and nephews, or my nephews more than my niece, plays it, right?
Are you an OSRS man? RS3?
Oh yeah, old school RuneScape all day, right? And that's what's on mobile, and they're playing it, and they're learning the game too, and they're in Lumbridge, and they're experiencing it, and they're seeing these memes and this fashion come back, right? Because there's a lore there that they want to understand too, right? I tell them, yeah, I was downstairs in your mom's room, because she's the only one who had a computer, playing it with a mouse that was a cord, and the computer was under your desk. You had to press it, and you had to wait for it to start up, and all this stuff. And they go, what? Right? Like it becomes this mysterious thing of like, since the dawn of time, we've told stories back, right? Of this is what your ancestors did. This is why they did it. Now you have to do it too. And now it's just become more pop culture.
Interesting. Moving into this idea, so we've obviously got this 20-year cycle in terms of trends and stuff like that, but something that shifts much more rapidly than that is the algorithm. And you see it follows the money, but I'm kind of wondering if you can talk to me more about these social media algorithms, like maybe things that you've noticed. Obviously, they change a lot, but like maybe some universal truths as well, some trends that have shifted recently.
Yeah, there's been a recent trend shift with Reels, TikTok that we're noticing, and YouTube Shorts as well, just in general, short form platforms. LinkedIn for video right now has been a big thing. But in terms of universal truth, great quality begets great followers, but it takes consistency to get there. And I think that's been true since the dawn of YouTube and before then. It used to be that the playing field was not even. You had to know somebody who knew somebody or put in years as a PA just to be able to create a video, right? And that's what made like something like Clerks so incredible at the time. Now someone looks at Clerks and goes, I could make that. It's like, yeah, but you couldn't at the time. That's what was so amazing. And that's what's amazing about YouTube is, yeah, you could go and make Clerks. So go make Clerks, right? Like, great quality content will always be appreciated. And it may not get views the first time you do it, but if you do it again and again and again, eventually you're going to get appreciated, right? And you will learn how to make it happen. Like I said, Mr. Beast, have you watched his early videos? They sucked. But you can see, if you track it and you look at like something like a vidIQ tool, you can see where he starts tweaking this. And he starts changing how things work, and he starts upping his production quality and finding the standard and learning, right? He got his 10,000 hours out. And it just takes that dedication to just generally make things work, right? But what I say with the algorithms is you do have to pay attention. And you do, if you want to be mega successful, that's everyone's idea of success on the platform is different, right? I could probably go out and build a page that's going to get a solid 1,000 views every video, and some people would be happy with that. If you told me I had 1,000 people in the room every time I went to a speak, I'd be pretty joyous just to hear me talk for a minute, right? But there's other people who go, I want 1 million people to hear me every so often, and I want 100,000 people to follow me and be dedicated. And that's what a brand should want, right? That's what a company should want. That's what we built towards. To do that, you got to play nice with the algorithm. You got to play nice with the platform and feed it like it's, like it's the plant in Little Shop of Horrors. You got to give it what it wants. It's a whole thing. And so within that, what we're seeing on Meta is it's becoming very much like TikTok was on SPAC. And what I mean by that is they want people to want to be successful on Reels, but they don't want to just give it to you, right? And they don't want you making ads that are organic, right? And so one thing that TikTok used to do is if you use the word comment or link in your video, they penalized you. Reels is starting to do the same thing, especially in captions. The AI has gotten so sophisticated that you cannot disguise your video. You cannot trick the algorithm. You have to play along with it and do your part. So instead of saying comment, you might say drop, leave a, right? And then instead of putting the word link, you just use the emoji, right? Speak in hieroglyphics, the AI. It won't get that subtlety. It doesn't get subtlety. That helps, right? And then the other aspects of that is boosting and paid ad work, right? Like once you tell that platform, you signal to that platform, you're willing to pay to be seen, you will always have to pay to be seen. It will take a long time to teach it otherwise. Because again, if we follow the money, they're incentivized to make you keep going after that. And so they might occasionally give you a touch of a boost, right? And that's why a lot of people, their first like 3 videos on a new page will do pretty well, because Instagram wants you making content, wants you feeling good, like, oh my God, I can do it. Look, I do get this. And then they all drop because you haven't actually taken the practices and worked with the algorithm, right? Whereas what we found with Swipe Labs is that there's great ways to do content and make it happen faster.
On that first point that you mentioned, we're talking about the fact that AI can I can basically understand if you say comment or link, right? And what that's trying to do, just so I can clarify for myself and the audience, is they're trying to de-incentivize you to make organic advertisements because they want you to go and pay for advertisements instead. Is that correct?
Yeah. So for the audience listening, there is a tool called ManyChat. It's an automated tool. It uses bots as well. But what it does is if someone puts in a keyword that you have signaled, the bots on your end send them something in return, a reply or a direct message via your account. And that will include, generally speaking, a link to something you're trying to convert them, right? And you have address back. It's really great for organic bottom of funnel content because you can use the copy you would in traditional ad, and then that person is going to see that and go, I do want that. I'm going to comment, and I have a high intent to convert. So you're getting high intent conversions from that. Well, if you're Meta and you're the only one allowing this, YouTube doesn't allow this, TikTok doesn't allow this, you go, okay, it'd be really, really unpopular to just pull it out and take ManyChat away. We don't want that bad press. What we can do is if we see the word comment or link in a caption, we tell our AI, flag it, don't promote it. That's the same as saying you can't use the word crypto because there's so many scam bots with the word crypto in it. They want to de-incentivize that, right? So if you use the word crypto, you can get it suppressed. And knowing this stuff is hard to know unless you really are putting in a lot of time and you're in these fields. And so that's kind of the big thing with this. Again, it comes back to what you said there, Liam, of they prefer you do a paid ad instead. So if you're going to make money off Meta, they want to make a little too. And they're not making it with ManyChat, right? ManyChat paying for that API access, that's not enough for them.
I mean, and the second part of the nature of that beast is that as soon as you start paying for ads, you're never really going to be able to get off that hamster wheel, right? Because an audience that's built using paid ads will always be built using paid ads. It's going to take an incredibly hard turnaround for you to then grow organically after that. And we actually noticed that on Twitter. Our Twitter account was largely grown using paid ads, and our engagement just dropped off a cliff after we stopped using it. It doesn't matter how many followers you've got, like your engagement will be absolute dirt, shit in the mud, poor, bad after that.
Well, and thinking about it, not to harbor on that point, but the way and this is why I compare organic and paid, and the two differences between them is, let's take a toddler, for example, who wants the attention of the parent. A toddler can go and say, mom, 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 repeatedly, right? Eventually, they're going to get that parent's attention. They're probably going to go, all right, what do you want? Right? How excited are they going to be for that question? Right? Whereas if you wait till your mom's at the dinner table with you and you've had a good meal and they're primed to receive that request, they're going to probably be in a little better mood to go, hey, excuse me, here's my question, right? And that's the difference between organic and paid to me. Is paid is the first toddler. Paid is and even with boosting, it's you're constantly just shoving content in someone's face until they go, okay, what? And that conversion may work. They may end up going, okay, yeah, that works. I'll do that. Sure. Here's my $5. Take my subscription. But are they going to champion your content? Are they going to be in your corner as things go through? Are they going to develop with you and be patient with you and enjoy your customer service and talk about you to other people? Probably not. Whereas if you build this content on value and trust based first, the first time you see that person, they may not convert. They may not comment that keyword. The second time, they may not convert. But it keeps hitting their algorithm and it keeps coming across them because they're finding value in it. They're enjoying what you're saying and they're appreciating it. And they're beginning to trust you guys. So that eventually, when they watch a video and it goes, comment my keyword below and get started, they go, you know what, this does make a lot of sense. And now they're primed to do it. And they have this whole story of why they did it. And they go to John Smith in the coffee shop with them the next day and they go, so I just downloaded this thing. I would follow the person, and I have the arguments now too because I've been primed and watching them. I'm not just seeing an ad and making a decision split second. I actually followed this and championed it now, right? And that creates a much higher quality user.
Mm. So if we were to try put in the last 30 minutes of conversation into kind of some core tenets of advice, like it would be create really high quality content, do it consistently and get your reps in, focus on organic and building a community and engaging with your audience. Anything else I'm missing there?
I would say that's a core part of it, especially for organic. Now there is a space for paid, but I would argue if you're going to do it, keep your meat and veggies separate, right? If we're talking about just segment those. There is a high value to paid ads too, but it's just we're talking organic, right?
Yeah, I mean, from this conversation, we kind of dove directly into all of your expertise and your knowledge, but we've not really given the audience context of the why you know everything that we've just talked about. So tell me a little bit about the genesis of Swipe Labs.
Yeah, it's a great question, and it does date back to Stonks. Like I said, I was the growth hire there at Stonks. I was doing a lot more than growth. I was also the biz dev rep. But by that, what I really mean is I was like a venture associate, going finding startups and interviewing them, qualifying them for demo days. I learned a lot about tech and how to speak tech from that, and I also learned how to talk VC from that. I read a lot of books to catch up there, but tried a lot of the growth stuff I learned from Mizzou. Teetered around with that, was working, but lo and behold, this guy contacts Ali Moyes and says, "Hey, I'm an angel investor. I watched a couple demo days. I really like your guys' mission, your value statements. Okay, they could get that from our content. I want to be your head of growth." And Ali said, "Let me interview you. Yep, you sound great. You're hired." And that was Jeremy Kuo. Jeremy is my co-founder here at Swipe Labs. Jeremy and I did growth at Stonks. When Jeremy started, we had a modest beginning, is what I'll call it. Right, we had the foundation was there of what we wanted to do. Jeremy was able to say, "This would make it even better. And this is how to experiment. This is how we test. And this is how we think principally." Kind of focus that effort. And we shot up to 60,000 on our email list pretty quickly in less than 6 months. Taking kind of some of the things we learned and really focusing it on. Jeremy left to go start his own company. I stayed at Stonks. Continued to do with growth. September of that year, I'm talking to some startups, and this guy goes, "Hey, there's this thing called GPT 3.5, and it's pretty good. And we got early access to it. We're this company." And I can't recall if it was Hyperwrite or Jasper that was pitching at this time. But he said, "It's going to be a pretty big deal. And I think a lot of investors are missing this." And I said, "You're not Web3, you're out." That was where we were at that time, right? And at the same time, we get an investor survey back, and we say, "What are you interested in?" And Sam Bankman-Fried was about to start going through all this stuff, and I think some of the investors knew, because out of nowhere, everyone said AI. I said, "Where's this AI interest coming from?" And I was like, "I think it's this GPT 3.5, guys. This is going to be something big." Lo and behold, ChatGPT launches. So I kind of heard from a lot of AI startups before then. Jeremy and I kind of use that information, and then Jeremy comes back to me and goes, "Hey, here's my idea. I'm starting this AI newsletter. Do you want to come with me?" And I was like, "Yeah, I think it's time I venture out and try something on my own with you." Jeremy and I worked so well together. There's a lot of trust built there. We had never met in person, but I trusted him because of our working relationship. We started growing an AI newsletter. The tactics we used to grow that newsletter organically were really working in the short form. This was something I had pitched to Jeremy, that I pitched to Stonks. We were not doing at Stonks. And we said, there's a market opportunity here. And the market opportunity we saw was with AI, and not just from a content standpoint. We talked a lot about content, but what AI is also doing on a coding and a building standpoint is it's making it really, the barrier to entry to start a SaaS product is much lower. The barrier to entry to start an AI product is much lower, right? All these barriers to entry to start companies is getting thin as possible, right? As a piece of paper, I would say. You take that and you go, okay, what are they going to need? Everyone can create the same product. How do you stand out? You market better. You grow better. So let's offer people a chance to grow better using what we've learned from Stonks and growing this newsletter and starting an agency. That was Jeremy's idea. I said, I'm enjoying writing a newsletter. I don't wanna. And he said, Davis, you're the one who knows some of this stuff too. You gotta help me here, or it's just not gonna work. And so again, that was a trust fall with Jeremy. And here we are a year later, and it's worked out pretty well. That's how Swipe Labs was started. And Swipe Labs, the name came from the idea that we engineer virality. That's the core tenet.
All right. Talk to me about that. How do you engineer virality?
Yeah. So it comes back to the Stonk days. The idea that virality is not a shot in the dark. There is a environment you can create around it to make that happen. And so, again, that was part of the test with Inclined AI. We had some videos go viral. We were priming it. We were learning. And it comes down to learning a lot about the brand you're working with and working as if you have all ownership there of what is the messaging, who do I need to target, and then how do I bury myself into that niche to be relatable, right? And then to be relevant and to build that relationship. There we go, relatable. That was the R I was missing earlier. And that's what happens there. And from there, you can create this bed of seeds, and one of them is going to shoot up out of nowhere. And when you go viral, it becomes so valuable. But what we promise is not just the virality happening, because the virality will happen at some point. What are you going to do in the meantime? Is what you constantly get questioned, right? And it's like, well, we'll try to build up your other values there and build out your reach, because there's a lot of value to reach that is underappreciated. Because reach begets word of mouth begets what we call dark social, right? People then learn and appreciate all of this stuff.
So with that, Swipe Labs, how long have Swipe Labs existed for?
It's a year in September.
A year in September, right? And you start out as two guys.
Two guys, one of us the sales side, one of us the fulfillment side, right? Cool. Jeremy's sales, I'm fulfillment. We kind of both, teeter-totter into each other's spaces some. But it started with, again, let's test it. Who's willing to do this? And how do we find these clients? And to be honest, the idea itself started in, I'd say, July of last year. And Jeremy said, keep writing the newsletter. I'll find someone. You focus on that stuff. That's still our first bet. Because we're selling ads on our newsletters. We're growing in the newsletter. It's a business, right? And we get one client saying, yeah, try it. Show me what you can do. And we go, okay, time to... And we kind of just spewed everything at the client. This is our strategy. This is what we think. Here's the playbook. And here's how we think it will work. And it works. The views were there. We had a viral video. We had another viral video. And so now we have a case study. So we bring it to the next client, right? And that client. And then it was from there, it was scraping knees. A lot of scraping knees, because what we have found in engineering virality, we're specifically focused on the tech space because that's our comfort area. That's our comfort zone. That's what Jeremy does. That's what I know. And as we're learning about this, we're finding there's different ways to go about that, and there's different client comfort levels. Every client has a different timeline on how long they're willing to wait for that viral moment, or how much they appreciate that viral moment. Right? If there's some clients, we get them 6 million views and it means nothing. Right? And that's kind of crazy to think about, but you go, okay, well, how do you get 6 million views and not have a client happy? And it comes down to aligning with them. And so we found out the importance of communication. And so, like I told you, word of mouth is king, right? Watch time duration is queen. Communication is God. And that's one of our principles, because at the end of the day, if you don't put a reasoning behind those views and you don't have the messaging right, the outcomes will not matter. And that's something we've learned, is really building out the client relationship side of it and trying to be clear about why we're doing what we're doing and the reasoning behind it, and understanding the different needs of different clients. Some clients, virality only matters if it's done in this way, right? So it's like, all right, how do we get to that path, and do they understand what it's going to take to get to that path? So that's been one of our biggest learnings is we can get to virality, but people are going to want to take different routes. They're not going to want to do, it is not a one size fits all, because when we try to do one size fits all, we run into roadblocks.
Mm-hmm. You talk a lot about principles. All right, you've got these internal principles and guidelines you kind of speak to the team about. Why do that in the first place?
Because I like Nike. I actually wear Adidas, but I like the Nike principles. I literally made our graphic with it to look like the Nike sheet that people toss around with their principles. What it really comes down to, that's more of a joke of, you have to have a culture. If you don't have a culture at your company, people won't advocate for you when they go to do their work, and the clients aren't going to feel like there's a cohesive idea here. So if people don't know what you do within your own company, and you compartmentalize too much, and you don't really talk about the overall goals, and you share the vision, no one can relate. And then when you go to talk to a client, it feels like everything's disorganized, right? Well, this guy's trying to do this, and this guy's trying to do this. Instead, the principles essentially become a uniting kind of keystone, so that the whole arch is supported of what we do. Everyone knows that communication is very important. Everyone knows that we move at startup speed because we work with startups, right? And that becomes kind of a way of making us look like a team, because that's what we're supposed to be, even when it was just 3 of us. And now that we've expanded, and we have video editors, we have copywriters, they also need to know this too, though. And it's a lot of hours we've put in that we have to just suddenly shove onto people and try to train them on very fast. And that is one of the challenges we have, is how do you get someone on board with what we're doing when it is different very quickly.
How many team members are you at now?
Full-time, we are at, I gotta count them up, I believe we're at 7 full-time team members. If you're counting contracts, it's bigger. Contractors, we have a lot.
What's been the hardest part about that hiring process? And have you ran into any problems with people not abiding by or just not understanding your principles? Like, is it you're just like, oh, well, you're not a fit, you're not moving at startup speed, get out?
All the time. Recruiting, I think, is just a hard thing for every company. And learning to hire, again, I'm 27, Jeremy's 26. That's not a skill either one of us learned very quickly. And when I was working with my dad at a publishing company, he interviewed an intern. And what he was telling me from the interview, he sounded very impressed with them. He said, we're not going to hire her. And I said, what do you mean? They said, I asked her a question about something. She said, I don't know, but I can YouTube it. I said, well, Dad, isn't that what you want to hear? You want to hear them admit if they don't know that, they'll go and find you. He goes, who's going to train them on that? The knowledge base has to be there. I have to know that they can do that. Right? And it's about patience for learning, right? And for us, at the speed we move, some things you're just going to have to get, right? I can't rely on you to go YouTube it, right? And so now I understand more what that meant. There's certain inherent traits that you're looking for in a hire, and when you don't see them, you have to call it out and make a decision quick. Otherwise, it will slow your growth down. One bad hire will set you back because now you're picking up slack, right? That you put on someone. You put a lot of trust in someone very quickly. So we have tried to build out our training and our knowledge systems better so that someone can come on board quicker. And if they're not with the program, they at least have the talent to learn what the program is and then decide if it's fit or not, right? And that's been very hard. Very, very hard.
If you were to pick one factor that you notice in an interview with someone you're going to hire, one thing that you would say is a decider for you, what are you looking out for?
I want to see an independent thinker. That's a big thing for me. I want to see someone who comes with fresh ideas. At the end of the day, at an agency like what we're doing, we're problem solvers more than anything. If a client brings a problem to us, it needs to get solved. And if it's solved in a quality way, we're doing our job, right? And to do that, you have to think critically and you have to think independently. And so when I can tell that someone is just repeating off my vibes, or just they've done the research and they're just telling me what we believe, I'm not seeing new thought there. I need someone who's going to bring something along the lines of what we want, but also be able to rely on their own thoughts. And in agency, we're at a startup level in that sense. You have to have a business builder mentality to do this, and part of that's thinking independently. That's the biggest thing.
Yeah, I would have to agree. I mean, we are a very similar size and just made a new hire. And it's a big thing that we've looked out for is like that ability to show initiative and ambition and go off on their own time. Like we just hired someone for social media, and we seen her come in and she came into the interview like with a plan. I noticed X, Y, and Z on your website. This could be done better, stuff like that. And I mean, that was like an immediate buy signal for us as well. It's something we look out for. And for someone very similar age, I just turned 25 recently, but it's hiring was way harder than I thought it would be. I assumed that like good talent was out there at all points, but it's such a fine, fickle line between people that are really, really talented that haven't started anything yet, between people that are like already so talented that they have their own thing, right? You need to find people right in that gap where they are really talented, they could start their own thing, but they haven't yet. And you want to do an amount of years with yourself, like you guys did with Stonks, before they go off and do their own thing. I mean, ultimately, I think that's the kind of talent level that everyone's looking for. Precisely. Going back, just before I round off everything, I want to ask you, and maybe Jeremy's got a good answer to this, so channel your inner Jeremy if you can. If you guys were to start Swipe Labs all over again, what would you do differently?
My answer will be different from Jeremy's, I will say, just because of how we prioritize things. The communication with the clients from the beginning, in my opinion, would have been very different. And what I mean by that is I would have tried to be less McDonald's, building out a system, and more building out a client base and building out for the clients. And that's where we really have moved to, is what strategy works best for the client to engage with virality, and then move on from there. Whereas in the very beginning, we tried making a one-size-fits-all because that's what worked for us, not understanding that it did work for the next client, and it started to work for the next client, and it started to, we thought worked for the next client, and then they told us no, it didn't, right? And that's something that I wish I had scraped my knees on a little bit sooner. The other thing I would have focused on is leaning into something Jeremy said of we have to be communicating with our clients quicker, something we've gotten a lot better at, but could be even better, in my opinion, is that account management aspect is super important in agencies. And I think I underappreciated that very early on. I thought the same thing I think about social is how I thought a client would react is if it's good content, it's good content, right? They'll see that it's good content and they'll appreciate it. Where I found out is, no, you kind of have to advocate for what you're doing and explain what makes this content good. So there's a trust built there. That trust does not start at 100. The trust starts at 0. And that was kind of my biggest learn is understanding you did not earn any trust yet. You got to earn it. And I think the other thing that Jeremy might say that I would agree on is our inbound growth channels. I would like to start on day one. We were using a lot of outbound growth channels. We're now using inbound, and it's really working for us. Would have liked to start from day one because I couldn't imagine where we'd be now.
Why? Why inbound more than outbound?
It's just a higher intent meeting at that point. If someone has discovered you and taken the time to fill out the form and ask for a meeting, rather than being told about you and being badgered for a meeting, they know what you're about and they're bought into the strategy because you've been communicating strategy. They know your values. They have an idea of who you are, so they're primed for that call. So the sale is now easier, the negotiation's a bit smoother, and it's a quicker time to close, right? Whereas outbound still works, and outbound's how we cat things moving to begin with. But it's the hard way, right? And I'm glad we figured out the hard way, but it is the hard way, right? For a reason.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot in there that listeners can take from that. I think especially with having, I mean, a lot of the points you've made throughout the interview, they kind of intersect with each other. I think one there that kind of comes to mind is that level of communication that you had internally. It's also something that you focus on externally with clients as well. I mean, it's become more and more of a priority for your organization. And we're still learning that as well. Like, we started with myself, Martin, Arturo, and we've grown to 3 or 4 people as well. So it's learning that it's like the team is growing, and to integrate them within that culture, like kind of introduce them to a bit of the history of how you got here today as well, like really get people to buy in internally. And you can only do that through effective communication, effective, consistent communication. I want to round things off with a bit of an existential question, if that's okay with you.
That's great with me.
So it's a bit open-ended, but why do you do what you do?
That is a deep philosophical question that I think man has wondered in general for a long time. And I think the easiest answer for me is the thought of filling out a spreadsheet or writing up a report or just reading over documents and memos is not something I'm against. I'm not against white collar or blue collar work in the sense of that is a great way to make it look. But for me, to think that I've taken this idea, this concept, this spark of something that a client wants to see and turned it into a reality for them, that's my goal, is amazing. And I just love telling stories. At the end of the day, if I was to define myself in any sense, it's I love stories. I love figuring out how stories happen, and I love being a storyteller, right? And advertising is one of the hardest ways to tell stories. And I do see myself as in marketing and advertising, right? They're two of the same ideas. And ad copy is to get someone to watch a video and relate to it, buy in because of the words you put down or the words you help direct and make happen, is very gratifying. It's very gratifying.
All right, modern day Don Draper then.
Yeah, John Hamm went to Mizzou, so maybe that's where it rubs off on.
There we are. That's a good way to round it off. I want to finish with just asking you, how can people reach out to you, communicate with you, talk to you?
Yes, this could be a whole other conversation. I don't have Instagram on my phone. I don't have TikTok on my phone, so socials are not necessarily the easiest way. So you can email me, Davis, Davis, at swipelabs, all one word, .io. Find me there. I'm willing to give out my business email. I don't mind. Or you can find us via LinkedIn or swipelabs.io, our site, if you want to talk to Jeremy. Again, he's the sales side. But anywhere you can find at McCondichie or at Davis McCondichie, those are my handles on socials. If you want to follow me there, there is content there, but again, not on my phone. So if you DM me there, I'm not going to see it very quickly.
Yeah. All right. So business email, best port of contact then.
Yeah. I'm not going to give up my phone on podcast.
I wouldn't expect you to. All right. I want to thank you so much for coming on. We've obviously worked together for a while, so it's been really interesting to actually learn a bit more about your background, your motivation stuff. So just thank you so much for making the time. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Liam. This is terrific.